This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today is Taki and Michael of the upcoming series that's out now, Alienated. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you and discuss this awesome story. As we like to ask every creator when they first come on, of all the things you could have picked in this world to do, all the different jobs that keep getting invented every day, comic books has to be one of the most rewarding things. Seeing your book come to life, everyone enjoying your story. As I've also said, it is one of the most heartbreaking things to get into. Not everyone likes your story. Sometimes you wish you could do something else. What keeps you guys in the game with comic books?
Well, comic books is a really unique vessel to tell a story. It's similar to film, but it's not film at all. It's similar to a prose novel, but it's not at all. It's a visual medium, but it is so unique in its that it's, like you were saying, like it is the most rewarding because you get to control so much of it.
Yes.
And you don't really have to really think about budgets like in film. You don't have to think about location. You don't have to think about props and lighting and actors and all of those things. Like you get to control all of it. Like you get to be the master of the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just that sort of totalitarian. What's the word I was looking for? Just the totalness of, this is the wrong word, but close.
Yeah.
Of the storytelling, because it isn't just like a novel. Like I love novels and I love words. It isn't just a film because of, you get to be in somebody's head and you get to control the pacing and stuff. And it's not necessarily that's a sense of control, but like it's an expression that goes in all directions, whereas like film and television or books, there's a couple of directions for it, but like, especially once you're coloring and lettering it, I mean, you're really, really controlling and having a say in every part of the expression of the art form.
You get to have it, like more engagement with the reader than any other medium, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of word building. And one of the lines that always comes from the show that comes back to mind, when we had Jason Fabik on before Rook got announced, he said, I want to make it so that Netflix could never produce a single episode of this comic book because it would cost them $200 million to even come close. And that's a beautiful thing with comic books is you are not bound by ending your story early because of limitations of what our current technology is. You can get as crazy as you want with the story.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also change it around. I mean, it's ever constant evolving.
Yeah. The language of comics is, I think, so unique. It's incredibly difficult to describe it to people who don't read comics, but it's kind of like pornography. Like, you know it when you see it, but you can't quite describe it.
Exactly. Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That might be the best bumper sticker. Someone should make it. That will sell out completely.
She says that a lot about, that's her food reviews as well. She's like, this is a lot like porn. Like I can't.
But
anyway.
you like it, but you can't describe. Yeah.
Yeah, that adds up. Perfect. So obviously you guys have been doing comic books for a little bit. How did this all start for both of you getting involved in this medium? Was it always like a storytelling artistic early on for you guys, or is it something that you found as you progress kind of through school or through life?
I've always been an artist and I've always been a storyteller. But I think the storytelling part actually just kind of occurred to me as I was just going through my journey of being in comics. Because at first I wanted to get into comics being a penciler. And then one thing led to another, and like I ended up like coloring a lot of comics for a while, and that was like not my intention at all. And then and like we wrote stories together as well. And but yeah, again, I it just wasn't like on my radar that that's going to be where I wanted to go.
You were in advertising school.
Yeah, I was in advertising school. When I decided, I'm like, I'm going to drop out of school and I'm going to pursue comics and whatever. But when I wrote my autobiography, and did everything, like I wrote it, I drew it, I colored it, and I lettered it, I realized, I'm like, well, I'm really slow when it comes to art. And and because I have this disease too, like multiple sclerosis, like forces me to like just limit my productive hours. And I'm a fast writer, but I'm a really slow artist. So I'm like, I think this is the direction I should go. And I get just as much, if not more, satisfaction out of like make that aspect of making a comic is the same feeling. Like I am so proud and I'm so happy making it, whether it's drawing or writing. So I love everything about it.
Just jumped right into the pool, which is that's the best way to get into comic books.
Yeah, I'm not crying. I just have allergies.
I was lucky. I discovered that I liked comics and I wanted to draw comics at a very, very early age. I was like 12 or so. And part of that just had to do with, like, a lot of people get into comics for the same reasons. Often, not always, but often we're all sort of like outcasts, right? Yep. Or like we're just not clicking with everything else. So like the way you would click with a book, you start reading a whole bunch of novels. She read tons of classic sci-fi stuff before she was reading comics, but it was for the same reason. So like I was drawing, kind of like, I was actually, what I was doing, I think I was tracing like a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons manuals. Those like really old fashioned ones,
yep.
Kind of crudely drawn, but in this awesome way. And then I got my hand on some comics and started tracing those. And then I found like X-Men Annual, I think it was 9, where they go to Asgard and it's drawn by Art Adams. And then there was like the sister book to it, the New Mutants Annual 2. These are the only comics that I can name. And like Art Adams' work, like it just grabbed me in a way that nothing else had before. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I didn't understand the difference between a penciler and an inker or like what the process was or anything. I just knew I wanted to draw comics. And my mom found like comic book stores, and through comic book stores, I found other people, including artists. So I was very, very lucky. At an early age, I had honed in on like, this is what I want to do, which is ironic because I would think if I've been doing this since I was 13, I keep thinking I should be way better at this. Like, because there's other people, they don't start until their 20s,
Well, me.
Yeah, you found it later on.
Yeah. But yeah. But you are actually an excellent artist. You know that, right?
I'm making a living.
Yeah, I'd about to say the covers for the book came out fantastic. So, I mean,
thanks.
Just wait till you see the other one too. Oh my goodness, I love them.
Well, and these were fun because they're different than the way I typically do covers. I mean, because it's her project and we live together, and I've seen it since the beginning. Like she's.
Where do you live?
Okay. Under your bed.
Don't look there, but he's there.
Blink twice if you're okay. But we work really closely, like kind of art directing the covers. Like we're just really working out the concepts because I would typically go in kind of different directions, a little bit more montagey with stuff or concentrating. I like to recreate a lot of panels from the book as covers. It's one of my favorite things to do because when I was first discovering comics, I remember especially Spider-Man for some reason did a lot of that. Like, recreate it from the inside. But Taki had like a really a specific vision, and I think it kind of comes from her advertising background. Like there's a branding that she's thinking about, with the alien. Like we have this whole cast of other characters, or her and John have this whole other cast of characters. And they're all great, but you're going to sell the book based on the alien, not on the like the relationships of the other characters. That comes later, maybe after a trade or something. But right now it's all about this alien guy, and she like figured out like, let's keep him front and center, and finding interesting ways of doing the same image over and over again has been a really cool challenge. One of the things we like to do, whether we're writing or drawing, is to find limitations, because through those limitations you get specificity and you get a message. And this is something that I learned from her when she was doing Sleeping While Standing, her autobiography, because it's her whole life story, but each chapter done in 4 pages. Yeah. So she had to like laser focus on what is it about. And so it's the same thing with these covers. What is it about? And it's been a blast. And then watching her color it is awesome. So yeah, the whole process has been really cool.
Absolutely. And as you guys were saying, it's funny how everyone turned to comic books, anime, video games, because there was the Outcast scenario. And now I look back, I mean, I was a 90s kid. I got bullied for going to see Spawn and X-Men. I got made fun of.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't remember.
Yeah, 100%. That was exactly what happened. You're staying up to midnight.
Remember what it was like, getting laughed at for a comic book. Like, people might not be into it now, but it's not because you just have one. Like, yeah, it was an uphill battle. I mean, especially
sorry for you guys, I was not a nerd.
Yeah, it was a difficult time.
I discovered comics when I was in my mid to late 20s.
She reinvented the rave scene in Minneapolis.
There you go.
Yeah, I was busy partying. But yeah, I didn't discover, like, I mean, I grew up in Japan until I was almost 10 years old. So I consumed a lot of like manga and anime and stuff like that. And it was part of my life. But when I came to the States, nobody in my family, nobody that I knew were reading comics at all. So I was not exposed to any of it. So I kind of lost touch with that world until I was like in my mid to late 20s when I met a boyfriend at the time. He was a huge, I know.
Always rubbing this in my face.
Yeah.
Always.
His name was Michael too. So I have a thing with Michael. Like,
it comes full
Michael,
circle.
But he was a huge fan of comics, and he also wanted to like get into comics and like make comics and whatever. And I, after we broke up, I'm like, oh, there's something missing in my life.
And it's not him.
And it's not him.
Not Michael.
He was a good guy, but like, yeah, we were just not meant to be together, right? Like, we were meant to be together, but something is missing in my life. And I was going to advertising school to become an art director, and I was working at an ad agency, and my path was laid out for the most part, right? And it made sense. Like, it's artistic, but I know I can like earn a fairly good living. Yeah. So absolutely. But yeah, but I didn't read comics until I was in my late 20s, and so I don't know what your like what it must have been like growing up being
back in our day. We had to walk to the comic book store uphill both ways while people are throwing eggs at us.
Barefoot?
Yeah. It was a tough time, but we made it. And it's not necessarily the worst thing. I think a lot of new creators that I tell who are indie creators, I definitely would have a hard time making my own story just because I am so bogged down by what I've read. Mm-hmm. I have an idea in my head already where sometimes coming in later into the game is not necessarily bad, because back in the day, it was just Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to follow those two paths. There's so many different things.
We were really limited in like our what we're being exposed to, so, I mean, frankly, some of it goes back to like the diversity issues and stuff, it was mostly guys that look like you and me making comics for the longest time. And even though there were different types of stuff, there were certain other things that were just not being introduced, and a lot of the books I read now, like, I don't know who's making them, but I'm getting like wildly different sort of ideas and points of views on stuff. And the other thing that you were talking about like not about discovering it later in life, Taki and Brian Bendis were teaching. Brian teaches at Portland State University, a comic book writing class, and Taki taught a couple semesters there. And it was one of the coolest things ever. And I would sit in through the video classes to watch and listen. And some of the best ideas were from people who didn't know the rules about comics.
Yep.
They didn't know what you were supposed to write about or not write about. And then listening to the students, like what comics they were into was like stuff we never heard about. Like, of course, there would be these sort of manga books and stuff that's super popular with younger people, but like just other stuff that we were exposed to because we just, you know, we were a part of a certain convention in comics of what we kind of read and stuff. So that's one of the best things is people don't know what they're doing. Making their first comics is some of the most interesting stuff. Like even if they're tripping over certain things, there's a freshness there and a new perspective. I'm sure you've seen it all the time as you're interviewing, you know, new people who just come in and they're just like, I don't care what the rules are, and that's the best thing about comics.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Yeah, I mean, I still have like a couple of like final comics that like these people had to like make for their final, and like it's still sticking with me. Like, wow, that was a really cool idea that I really want to rip off.
Yeah, no, there were ideas that were so good, like they were like mind blowing. Even Bendis would be like, he'd call us afterwards and can you believe this idea?
What? Where were we? Like, what happened that we didn't really think about this? And I'm like, I don't know. It was wild. It was so great. So awesome.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it provides a lot to the story. Which, like I said, it came out really great. Now, do you guys remember like your first official piece where you are kind of, I wouldn't say in the industry, obviously, as soon as you start to work on a comic book, you are automatically enrolled in this lifelong group forever. But do you remember the first piece of work that you really saw to finale that just kind of hits you right in the chest of like, wow, it's real. It's come to fruition. It's in the universe.
I guess the Rapture, the story that we did together.
Yeah, you did this thing with Brett that was like for Top Cow, right?
Yeah, but like, you know, he's asking like what made it like, just be like real. This is like this is it. Yeah, I think it was Rapture through Dark Horse. We co-wrote the story together and he did the art. Yeah, I think that was it. I'm incredibly proud of that story. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's kind of tricky for me to say because I started so early.
Yeah.
And I was published very early. I was like, my first book was, I think I was like 14. It was a book called New Storia with Tim Truman. And I was so young at the time, like I just didn't understand what had actually happened really. You know, like I got the book and it was really cool and stuff. But also because I was so young and like it wasn't Marvel and DC, it kind of quite didn't feel real either. And even previously to that, I'd been published in like fanzines. There's not fanzines, but was a comics journal, Amazing Heroes. Those fan magazines back then, and you could write in and send your art. So I was like published in the back of those, and so I had these little tiny like dipping my toe into it. And then when I became focused on wanting to be a comic book artist, even at like 14 or so, I was so invested in making this happen that there was a sense of desperation that even to this day hasn't left me. Like I still feel like I'm poor and trying to make it no matter what. So yeah, it's hard to kind of nail down what book was it that made me feel that way. It's very strange, but yeah. When I think about that, it's hard to say when it felt like I had my first like.
Yeah, because I always tell people, I'm like, well, I'm still breaking in. So, you know, there's that.
And once you're breaking in, then you're just trying to stay in, you know. It's kind of like you're constantly on the Titanic. You're trying really hard to get onto this ship that's so cool, that's going to take you over to America and all these possibilities. And then you're just trying not to die after that, you know. that's what comics is like. It's like, I want to be driving on the ship and I want to live.
Yeah. I was told it's like driving a car to a gas station, but and you're on empty, but the gas station keeps getting a little bit farther away, and you're just so carefully hitting that gas to try to get to it, constantly for the rest of your life.
I think part of that's what keeps it fresh. Is like so even though I'm in a position where I've quote made it professionally, like I have regular jobs and all that kind of stuff, the art form itself feels exactly like what we were just talking about as well. So like. Even when it's not hard for like having the work and all that, it's still hard to figure out what you're doing. Like every comic book I do, and I figured this phrase out. I love it, which is, it feels like a puzzle I almost solved. You know,
Yes.
like I almost got this right this time. You know, and then maybe it's like Ed Wood, right? He's like, next one they'll be even better, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I like that sense of chasing it. You know,
Yeah.
I like the sense of chasing the desperation, chasing this, I can make it better kind of thing. You know.
Well, that's literally the definition of art. Is that
Yes.
you're always looking for perfection that doesn't exist.
Definitely. And that, I mean, that's comic books.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into Alienated, the biggest thing is obviously with Alienated, it takes place in kind of a modern day, and we kind of blend the sci-fi with where we're at today.
Mhm.
Does that change how you write and or draw comics for both of you, as the world changes almost every day, and what we know and the perceptions that it changes, especially in the sci-fi realm of writing comic books? Who knows when we'll have another planet, or even learning to travel farther distances to the galaxy. Does that at any point change your own perceptions in your own writing and art?
I absolutely think science definitely affects a lot of our stories, not just Alienated, but I have this old story that I've been working on for a long time, and like the science keeps changing, and I'm like,
Yep.
oh man, I gotta make an adjustment. But at the end of the day, you know, when you tell a story, like if it's going to be sci-fi, and you use science, as long as you have a story that is relatable to humans, then I don't think having your science be accurate is important at the end of the day, unless
that's literally what it's about.
that's what the point of the story is. Yeah,
it's difficult too, because if you're trying to stay on top of science, or on top of what's happening in today, like things are moving so quickly, like everything. There's been a couple projects where especially Brian thinks about the future a lot, and it's happened in his own writing. And there's projects we're working on where we can't keep up with the changes that are happening.
Exactly.
I'm working on one right now that I feel like, if it wasn't for the human aspect of it, the story of it is gonna
date itself quickly.
It'd be like watching Hackers, that movie from the 90s.
Great movie.
But things get dated, and like even things like cell phones is really interesting too, because not only does the cell phone date like the book when it comes out, especially as a future when they'll change. I don't know how they're going to change, but they'll change. There's also an interesting thing that I noticed with technology. When it's being used in the comic, we are often reading comics to escape. So when somebody pulls out a cell phone in the comic, it's not like it's bad or something, but it certainly doesn't have, like, the first time you saw somebody do a text in a comic, I was like, oh, of course, this is neat, right? And now, like, even though it's a daily part of everybody's life, you want to look for reasons not to use a phone in a comic. Same thing with television shows. Sometimes they're placing them in time periods so that they could just not have cell phones, because that's not why people are watching the show, to get away from this thing, right? So it's I think Taki's right. Like, basically, if you just stay focused on the characters, it won't matter. Like, look at 2001: Space Odyssey. Right? Nobody's looking at go, oh my God, this technology is so dated.
Exactly.
But it can be tough for sure.
Definitely. It can definitely trip you up for sure.
Yes,
and it's funny we talk about phones, because just today we were talking at work about, we were telling a young person at work to call collect, and he had no idea what that meant at all.
Did you ever see those videos where, like, they'll take young kids with a rotary phone?
Yes.
And they're just challenging them to use it. And it's great. And like, there's nothing wrong with them not knowing how to use it, but it's like, it is mind bending, something that you grew up with. It is completely alien, Yeah.
It's great. It's
Go
crazy.
back to rotary. Or like our cell phones should have rotary option.
That would be
That would be
funny.
super cool.
If you had the text by rotary, there would be a lot less car accidents. Everyone would just completely would just stop
Yeah.
the text message till they got to their location.
Agreed.
Yes. Well, that brings us alien technology to people, obviously, to our story, Alienated.
Mhm.
So where did the initial concept time frame wise did this story kind of come about?
We were trying to figure that out recently, and I can't remember when I had this single image just pop in my head. But I woke up one day and I just had that single image pop in my head of like a bunch of aliens arrived on Earth, but they're all dead and they're littered all over the globe. And one answer is like the biggest answer has been answered, but now we have like so many more questions that can't be answered now. So like that image came to my head and I'm like, oh dude, that's so cool, I like that. And we're trying to figure out like when I had that thought. Was it like during the pandemic or before? I don't know, I can't remember. So we're gonna say like a few years, maybe
in the 2000s.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That works.
Yeah. And it just came from just this one image in my head, and I just thought it was really neat. I started asking questions like, well, how did they get here? Why are they here? Why did they die? All those things. And then I kind of thought about like, how would society react to this? What would people like individually like? Is it a good thing, bad thing, sad, good, happy, whatever? And I just explored all these things, and once I had answered some of the questions, I'm like, well, we have a story, and that's how it happened.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the best things about this story is when you get to reading comic books, ideas are going to be recycled. And I'm okay with that because I know everyone's going to try to
Absolutely.
bring a different spin to it. I do like that this one started first with aliens are here. They are all dead. You generally don't hear a story go to that right away. But it does bring a lot more sense of intrigue to the story by far. And it definitely breaks the mold, which I think is the fun part about reading comic books is when we go against the grain.
Yeah.
She's done a great job of that because like there is this a convention of storytelling with this genre of an alien comes to Earth, has to get back home, or an alien comes to Earth and what happens with it, right? Like there's tons of different movies, whether it's obviously there's like E.T., there's Starman, a dozen other of these kind of films and stories. And she just at every turn looked like, how do I subvert the expectations? Because like there's cliches and then there's conventions,
correct?
Right, and then you're talking about like a convention of storytelling. There's nothing wrong with those. There's the things that are expected and people kind of want and they work for a reason. But she, for the most part, just found ways of avoiding that. And like just the opening of like, yeah, you answered this question about aliens, but then they're all dead, so there's no answers. And I was like, wow, that is great. That's like an ABC television show.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And just at every turn, every time we were talking and trying to figure stuff out, she's just figuring out how not to do the thing you expect,
Yeah, and that's the fun part for me.
Yeah.
Like that's why I like storytelling is just figuring out this puzzle, because it is a puzzle. Like each story is basically like it's been told before. I'm sure like my story that I'm telling through Alienated, that story's been told in different forms
or different,
by in a different language or whatever, right? It's been told before. I know it. But I just want to figure out how I can tell it in my own voice, in my own unique way, hopefully, and hopefully that resonates with the readers. And just figuring that part out is one of my favorite things about storytelling.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things too about the alien design, and I just recently talked with Omar Morales, who did Major Tomas. I love when people keep a basic alien form and don't take the first issue to tell me there's 5 colonies with 3 different colors and this is the ranking system that they evolved from. There's the books for that. There's novels for that. I'll read the novel. My comic book, I want my basic alien.
I like that her and John like just stuck with like the the core of what
Yeah.
You know?
And John, it was his idea to have Alien have like 2 thumbs,
Yeah.
which I love for no reason. Then it's just cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like you know, with John, all the character designs were a huge surprise to me. Like none of the characters that like I purposefully, you know, like gave him minimal description, just because I needed to see like what he would come up with. So, you know, and what he came back with is like nothing like I pictured at all. None whatsoever. And it was the most delightful surprise.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
John
you knew to trust John's instincts as a creator, because like he's a great storyteller. We've known him for a really long time. And like one of the things I keep saying, like, so big chunk of this story takes place in an old folks home, in a retirement home, and like, you know, I don't know how interesting I could make that. John made all those characters kind of like, I keep saying that they kind of feel like Muppets, you know, like they've got a life and a bounce to them, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's so good with like character dynamics, especially within a family. And that stuff's hard to do. And it's my favorite thing to do, because body language and acting is super important.
Absolutely.
And yeah, John and I come from kind of the same school of thought with stuff, and just watching him, you know, take Taki scripts and put himself into the stories was awesome. I hope you guys keep working together.
Such a delight. It's amazing.
Definitely.
To the point where in the first issue, one of the first scenes in the retirement home was so impressive to me that there was a character that like had one line, and it was just going to be that the end of it. And I loved him so much that he became part of the story afterwards, and he became a big part of the story afterwards.
Yeah. She loves old men. That's basically that's her kink.
Yeah.
All right, wait. You know what? Everyone's got a passion for something,
which is good, because I'm not getting any younger. So.
There you go.
Can't wait.
It's gonna be the next story right there. It's gonna be fantastic.
It's like porn.
Okay.
You just know it when you see it. Now, I will say one of the better things too about the Alien, and I think the reason why it's nice too that they were kept kind of in their basic shape to kind of what we early imagined Extraterrestrial, is the ending, because they come off as almost kind of lemming-like. I mean, little gray bodies all over the world. I have to assume, all right, well, maybe they're not that smart, because what happened? But that ending, and kind of the duality of what we're perceiving and what the alien might be perceiving are clearly 2 very different worlds. And living in that duality of kind of peace and possible disaster all in one. I think that was probably one of the better endings I've read in a while.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I love that you're picking up on.
Yeah.
Because Taki's, like, we work really, really hard at not saying what a thing is. You know, like one of our big philosophies is audience participation. You know, when you're watching a show and they're info dumping on you, that is not interesting. You know, you're stealing something from the audience by telling them everything. There's certain things you need to say out loud, right? But like if you're watching a television show like Severance, you know, Severance was full of kind of a show don't tell. And then when they did tell it, it wasn't a big giant speech that they just rammed down your throat. Just like 3 or 4, you know, 1 or 2 sentences.
They did it through visual storytelling or conversation.
Yeah. So Taki's constantly doing that, and be like, "Does this clear what I'm saying?" Because by not saying it, you know, and then John's art will come through, and then sometimes Taki's taking words out because John is showing.
Yeah.
You don't need the blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's always great when the story can speak for itself. And even when it can't speak for itself, but it lends so many different answers for everyone to interpret your story.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that your story is almost open-ended, even though you may not have meant it to be an open-ended question.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you're picking up on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the hard parts about sci-fi stories is that trying to get the right balance where you spend
Yes.
enough time to develop the characters, and not get too invested in one side versus the other. Because sometimes, usually, it's the first issue gives us everything.
Mm-hmm.
Second issue is just an alien only issue, and then we kind of go back and forth to about issue 4 or 5, and then we finally see kind of a resolution at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any difficulties in trying to balance that give and take to the relationship?
Yeah, definitely. Because we only have one alien, and he's his English is very limited.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Like us.
how? Yeah, yeah, like us, and like how? Like I had a hard time trying to like justify having the alien take up a lot of the pages, because I'm like, well, how interesting would it be to have an alien just speak in broken English and take up a bunch of pages. I just think I just don't want to bore our readers.
Yep.
So that was a really hard balance. And then oftentimes, like I would write a script, and like I would read back and I'm like, oh crap, I didn't put alien in here at all. Like I have to go back and like
I remember that.
I have
Yeah.
to go back and like I'm like, I have to add something in there.
He is the premise.
Yeah, he is the reason why people would want to pick this up, I would imagine. So I have to put him in there somewhere. So yeah, I had some struggles.
But Taki's also really good. Like, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I think we have a philosophy about things like word count on a page or scenes. Sometimes you'll get a book where you're on the same scene for 6 or 7 pages. That's almost half the book. That's a third of the book. So, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I think it is much more rewarding, especially when you have a cast of like a family and stuff, to sort of limit your space. Taki will go like, this scene could be 6 pages, but I'm going to do it in 3 or even 1. The brevity adds focus, and it helps you keeps focus, and you don't get bored with the characters. Like maybe you don't like this one particular character, or they're just not as engaging as the other. So Taki knows just keep it moving and stuff. It's great pacing.
Yeah, pacing is important for sure for me, but it's not. I don't like. Again, it's just my style, and that doesn't mean that like my style is the only style that works and is good. It's just that like art is it's
not everything should be one thing.
No, absolutely not. And there's no right answer for any of this.
Yeah,
absolutely, and that's the beauty of the medium. But funny enough, pacing, because the 2 top things I would say set any comic book apart is pacing and lettering. I don't care who you are. You could go get absolute Batman #1 and put pink glitter in the dialogue. I guarantee you it's not going to be the same story. And I think a lot of people overlook those 2 components, and you take it for granted because it's so well built into a story that it is very hard to notice that it's even there. But your eye would know it if you went to something that was off color or off script, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Now, one of the other things that was really impressive too, I think, about the beginning of the story is how quickly society was put their life on hold for like 5 minutes, and then at literally school's out, you have everyone just kind of eating lunch by the cars, like, oh man, how many dead bodies are they going to keep finding? This is crazy. And it's important. I think that's the relatability, is seeing that, being like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly how quite a few areas would probably handle it after a while. Just, oh man, this again? Come on, I gotta go to work.
Yeah, because again, you have all these questions and you can't get the answers. So what, you're gonna
stop life
and talk about what? Like there's nothing to be done about it, really. So
well, and what was interesting was in the past 5 or 6 years, we've had a couple of these things happen in society that sort of stopped things, but also didn't stop things. It's so like, I think that you know, sometimes when you're watching the show, you're like, oh, they wrote this during the pandemic, right? You can tell, right?
Yeah.
And not specifically just the pandemic, but like I remember, so obviously we're into the sort of the alien UFO culture, right? And back in 2017, we had these videos. So like during the past few years, we've had a bunch of different weird incidences that happened where, you know, you would think life would just come to a stop, you know, and it kind of didn't. Even during the pandemic, people were very, you know, however you feel about it, people were very quickly about like, well, we have to keep going and stuff, you know, whether it was they were a little harsh about it, about not caring about people dying, or they were like, well, even if people, we just got to figure stuff out. Other people just want to lock themselves up. But like really life didn't, even then life didn't really stop. And like in 2017, we had it was like the Air Force or the Department of Homeland Security or something come out with these videos. There were these Air Force videos of aliens, right? Basically these aircraft, these ships that we just didn't know. And they literally said, we don't know what they are. Now they've kind of walked that back and all this stuff. But at the time, it was sort of this moment of disclosure, as we talk about in the UFO community. And nobody cared.
No one
because you still had bills. You still, you know, it was like until there are real answers or something to do about it, it is a 5-minute curiosity, even for something that big. You know, so, you know, and there's been a couple of other moments like that where it's crazy things happen and you take a breath, but then you move on. So like that helped guide some of these choices about like, well, what would happen if this thing happened? And, you know, we had like, I think before say the 2020s, you might have made different choices about.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But we'll
Definitely.
never know.
I mean, I think everyone remembers the Storm Roswell campaign.
Oh yeah,
I think that was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
right. That was funny.
Wow, that's
Nothing.
right. My goodness.
Yeah, and even now
secrets.
there's regular like hearings with Congress about the UFO community and whistleblowers, and nobody's stopping.
Yeah.
You know.
Money still has to be made.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to our final question before we get the information on the comic book. Obviously, there's a lot of fun. This is a personal story. This is a story you want to see come out. Is there one thing in particular you guys each had fun either drawing for the cover or just writing that kind of a moment or something you're just like, you know what, I'm really happy I did this story because this is really fun for this part right here?
Well, I guess issue 6, the final issue. I love that I was able to like wrap everything up in a nice, neat bow, and I'm actually proud of it. So hopefully, it resonates with the readers that they feel the same way.
So for me, it was working with Taki and John. You know, watching Taki put the story together. John, who I've known a very long time, so as Taki, to come together as this sort of extended family. And like as I'm working on the covers, I'm referencing the way he drew characters, and then seeing Taki not only color it, but then do all the production on the covers of like logo placements and stuff, and watching her figure that out.
Logo design was wow. I wasn't even thinking about it. They're like, yeah, so where's the logo? And I'm like, oh, let me get back to you, and I'll give me like an hour.
Yeah, great logo too. But yeah, that was the best part. It's just, I mean, that's one of the best things about comics, especially if you're largely doing creator-owned comics, is you tend to be working with friends and extended family, you know, so it's this sort of group effort thing, you know. That's just such a great feeling. So,
yeah, and you just kind of figure it out as you go along, and I think that's also fun too. It's just spontaneous, and it's still art. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's 100% correct. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it once they get it read. And as we were talking, issue 1 is currently out.
Yes, it is out. It's been out since the 8th of this month. And the next one will be out May 6th.
And you go right over to Amazon through Comixology, and you can just get it right now. Right to your iPad.
Yeah.
That is one of the best parts probably about Comixology, I think, was knowing that your comic book is essentially worldwide. Just such a huge audience.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and I just love that like, I love comics and I love printed comics, but there's limits to like who has access to it.
Correct.
There's a ton of people in the United States who doesn't have access to like a comic shop. Like, so if they hear about like this comic that interests them, they're like, well, how do I get it?
Yeah.
And and then I have to order it and I have to pick it up and all this stuff. There's a lot of steps that you have to take, and whereas with Comixology, it's just right there. And it's easy. So I do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for everyone interested and they want to keep up with what you guys are doing, see where the work goes, where are the best place to follow you?
I'm mainly on Blue Sky and Facebook sometimes, and Instagram. So all of those, I'm at Taki Soma. But again, I'm gonna bring up my multiple sclerosis because who doesn't hear about that enough. So I'm not on it very much, as much as I wish I could be, but he's on it a lot more.
Yeah.
And he has a newsletter that he puts out too. So, and whenever he puts it out, he talks about my stuff too. So if you want to keep up with not just my stuff, but Michael's stuff, then it would be good to like follow, sign up for his newsletter.
Yeah, my newsletter is in the bio of pretty much all the platforms. So I'm on all of them, mostly active on Blue Sky, and I'm promoting a lot of Taki's work as well, because since she's not doing a lot of that like bandwidth wise. So if you follow me, you'll follow her stuff, and I'm all the platforms, really easy to find, just at Oeming.
Perfect. Well, we'll have that linked into the show. For everyone listening, you can get issue 1 now on Comixology. Alienated, we look forward to reading this. We hope everyone listening has enjoyed this episode. This is brought to you by the Uncensored Nerds Network, our show. We Got Issues, Plot Hole Production, Ben Temple Smith's podcast. We're all on this network. So go listen to our episode, listen to other episodes. More importantly, go to Comixology, read Alienated #1. And like I said, I can't wait to read the next issue. Everyone listening, we hope you had fun. Have a good night.
Thank you.